Hey, you.
Okay. Good evening to everybody. I am starting the session on EPR, and I would like to first thank Avery Dennison for having this session. It's going to be an educative, informative session, and I welcome our speaker, Mr. Shalinder Singh. Let me introduce Mr. Shalinder Singh. Shalinder Singh is the founder and CEO of MS Sustain Mantra, a sustainability consulting firm focused on MSME segment in India. They serve clients in the chemical, plastic, packaging, plastic recycling, textile, and NGO segment in India and assist in their waste management, sustainability, and circular economy initiatives. He is a global chemical and plastic professional with 4 decades of pan-Asia experience with leading MNCs in senior leadership roles. He is actively involved in waste management, particularly plastic waste management through industries, bodies like AIPMA, ASCOM, and others, and is on the advisory board of Amity University of Environmental Studies. He has collaborated with prestigious institutions uh, like TERI and EUC on initiatives dealing with the circular economy for plastics. He is actively involved in policy advocacy and various government bodies and also mentors startups in the clean tech segment. He has a wide network of global connections in the industry, academia, and government institutions. Welcome to you, Mr. Shalinder Singh. Uh, can I first request Manoj from Avery Dennison to speak a few words before we get on to the main program?
Yeah. Thank you, Jadidji, and welcome everyone to this very important discussion that we had scheduled in collaboration with LMAI. The topic, as all of you are aware, is EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility. We at Avery Dennison feel that this is a very important step that the government has taken to manage plastic waste. This has been in discussion in some form or the other over the last couple of years. But this version of plastic waste management policy that's been rolled out by CPCB appears to be a little more clearer and specific than the versions that we saw in the past, and it will directly impact you as a converter and even us as an organization. So I request.
Can I request all the participants to please keep their mics on mute, please?
Yeah, thanks. So this is an important initiative, I think, and it will directly impact you as a printer and us as an organization here at Avery Dennison. Let's listen into Mr. Shalinder. He is he is our expert consultant to Avery Dennison, helps us with understanding and interpreting these newer policies and topics around sustainability. And I'm very sure that this will be a very informative session to everyone, and each of us will have one or two takeaways in terms of what we should be doing next in lieu of the EPR policy that's being rolled out. So Shalinder ji, to you, and we'll all listening.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, Manoj ji and Jayati ji, for that very nice introduction. At the outset, let me thank Avery Dennison and LMAI for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this subject. Disha, if you could move to the first slide of the presentation. Now, as that the plastic packaging is recovered from the environment and that it is disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. So that very simply is this concept of EPR. Now, EPR came in Europe almost 30 years ago. It started in Sweden. It's been in Europe for many years. And as some of you may know, that the European standards are now, in fact, going even beyond EPR. So moving quickly to the next slide, as I was, kind of reviewing the registrations that had come in, I saw that less than 10% of the people who had registered said that they fully understand EPR. Most of the people said we either don't understand or we understand it partially. So over the next 4 or 5 slides, I'll try to take you through the highlights and basics without making it too complicated, so that the key parts of plastic waste management rule it comes across hopefully to all of you. At the end of the presentation, I'll also be happy to take some question and answers. Now, in India, the plastic waste management rules have actually been here since the 1990s. But the first significant change was made in 2016, which is why you see the title of the slide, where along with plastic waste management rules, solid waste management rules were also introduced and refreshed in a way. And they were essentially applicable to post-consumer or plastic waste in the environment. The idea was that, how do we minimize generation of plastic waste? How do we ensure that littering is stopped? How do we ensure that the plastic waste is segregated at source, etc.? And predominantly, the responsibility was given on to 3 components of the plastic value chain, packaging value chain, classified either as a producer, as an importer, or as a brand owner. Now, the rules, they were introduced in 2016, but subsequently they were amended in 2018. They were refreshed in 2021, and now recently notified again on 16th February 2022. And so PWM 2016, along with all its amendments till 16th February 2022, are now called as PWM 2022. Now, you will appreciate the nature of this evolution, because you'll be surprised that just yesterday, another amendment was made to this PWM 2022. So the rules, in a sense, are evolving. They are not perfect. They are evolving. And with every amendment, the effort is to provide more and more clarity on what these regulations are. Now, recently, the industry has also gone through this whole issue of single-use plastics, the banning of single-use plastics, what is a single-use, etc. Now, as someone who deals with the ministries, I know that in the background, there are several consultations that go on with various industry members, individual organizations, industrial associations, so on and so forth. Okay, let me now come to the next slide, please. Let me now come to the key features of PWM 2022. Like I said, PWM 2022 is now an amalgamation of PWM 2016 with all the amendments up to 16th February. Now, some of the key features are here. So there's this definition that has been provided for an importer, producer, brand owner. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to read the slides. But essentially, an importer is someone who imports a plastic packaging product or products into India. A producer, as you can see, is someone who's engaged in the manufacturing or of carry bags and multi-layered packaging and plastic sheets, etc. And the brand owner means a person or a company who sells any commodity under a registered brand label or a trademark. So So what you will notice here is that plastic chips manufacturers, companies like Reliance or Indian Oil, etc., are not included in this. The second key feature is that the plastic packaging has been divided into 4 categories. The first category is what is known as rigid plastic packaging. So this could be anything like water bottles, drums, cans, anything that is rigid in nature and is used as a packaging for packaging a commodity that is then sold to the customer. The second category is what is known as flexible plastic packaging of single layer or multiple layers, but all the layers in that flexible plastic packaging are all made of plastics. So you could have a polypropylene and a PET combination, or polypropylene, PET, and polyamide and so on. But they are all plastics. So that's classified as flexible plastic packaging. Third category is the multi-layered plastic packaging, where at least one layer is a plastic. The other layer can be paper, can be foil, can be anything else, but at least one layer is a plastic material. The last category is, essentially deals with carry bags or plastic sheets or carry bags that are made out of compostable plastics. Now, in the PWM 2022, for the first time, biodegradable plastics and compostable plastics were also included into the provisions of the law. Now, for biodegradable plastics, generally these rules are they don't apply to a large extent. For compostable plastics, your plastic has got to be classified as a compostable plastic, meeting certain Bureau of Industrial Standards regulations. They are all specified in the regulation, in that notification. Okay, moving on. Now, 2-3 other things that came. I'm sorry for this rather busy nature of this slide, but 2-3 other concepts were introduced for the first time in PWM 2022. Now, what they have done here is, depending on the category of packaging, whether it's rigid, flexible, or multi-layered, or carry bags or compostable bags, there is a EPR target that has been fixed that starts from the year 21-22, progressively goes up to 27-28. So if you look at the table to the top left-hand corner of the slide, you will see that the targets proceed from 25% in 21-22 to 70% in 22-23, which is this year, and then go to 100% in 23-24. What this targets means is, and I'll explain very simply, if you are putting, let's say, 100 kilos of plastic packaging in the environment, then in the year 21-22, you're responsible for 25% of 100, which is 25 kilograms, to make sure that this packaging is retrieved from the environment and is environmentally sound way disposed of. In the year 23-24, which is next year, your responsibility will be for the 100 kilos that you put out in the environment. Now, what is environmentally sound disposal methods? They are also listed in the rules that have been notified. So, for example, sending the material to a cement plant, to a waste to energy plant for incineration, or recycling it, etc., are mentioned as the approved ways of disposing of this plastic waste. Now, looking at the table in the middle, which says recycled content. Sorry, before we come to the recycled content, I'd like you to look at the table on the right-hand side of the slide that says minimum recycling target. Now, with the PWM 2022 notification, the government has also said one more thing, that effective 24-25, that is the 2 years from now, out of your EPR target of 100, let's say, in the case of rigid packaging, 50% of that EPR target you have to discharge through recycling methods. The balance 50% you can do either incineration or send it to a cement plant or stuff. So what they have got is a percentage target on how much has to be recycled. Now, as you will see in that table, that the recycling target depends on the category of the packaging. So for rigid packaging, it starts from 50%, goes to 80% from 27-28 onwards. In the case of flexible multi-layer plastic, it's 30% to 60%. Same way for flexible packaging, and same carry bags and compostable bags, starting at 50%, going up to 80%. So you cannot just say that, okay, I have got 100 kilos, I'm sending it to a cement plant for incineration, and that's it. Now, I would like you to also draw your attention to the table in the middle, which is the recycled content. What they are saying here is that, again, effective from the financial year 24-25, that in your packaging, let's say recycled, let's say category 1, you should have minimum 30% of recycled content. So let me give you an example. If you're making a plastic bottle, let's say of HDPE, 30% of that plastic bottle should have recycled HDPE in the packaging. And that recycled content also, you can see, progressively increases from 30% to 60% in the case of rigid packaging. In category 2, from 10 to 20%. In category 3, from 5 to 10%. Only in category 4, there is no recycled content requirement. So, to very quickly summarize, 2 additional conditions have been brought in. One, that effective 24-25, there's a minimum percentage of your EPR target that needs to be met through mechanical recycling. Second, again, effective 24-25, there's a minimum recycled content that has to be in your packaging. Now, the reason the recycling target and the recycled content target become effective from 24-25 and not immediately is that the ministry has given the industry 2 years to make whatever necessary arrangements, investments, etc. that are required so that the appropriate level of recyclates are available. You know, in India, a lot of the plastic gets recycled. There is already a recycling industry, but many of the recyclers are not registered recyclers. So, and you can imagine that, you know, even with let's say a 5 to 10% recycled content target, if we, based on various figures that I have come across, apparently in India, total of 5 million tons of plastics goes into packaging. And even if we take 5% of that as, let's say, to be recycled content, that's a huge number. And there is not enough capacity in India to make that amount of recycled content available. So these rules become effective from 2 years from now. Now, of course, many of you may be thinking that the target is very steep. You know, how can you put 30%, so on and so forth? So these are issues that that you as an industry member and several industry associations need to be thinking and debating on about whether these rules are practical, can they be met, If so, how can they be met, etc. If there are any difficulties, then I would strongly recommend that these be pointed out to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and that the dialogue should start as early as possible. At the bottom, you will see another table which says there's a formula given in that, A plus B minus C. For most of the people who are attending this call, I presume that they fall under the producer category. And for that producer category, in order to determine what is your EPR target, they have given a formula. Again, all of this is mentioned in the notification, PWM notification, where A is the sales of packaging material in the previous 2 financial years. So if you are calculating your EPR liability for this financial year, you have to take the sales of the last 2 financial years and average that. That's your A. B is the last 2 financial years factory waste, or what is also known as pre-consumer waste that you have made. And C, the factor C, is the last 2 years sales to brand owners, registered brand owners. One important point to remember here is that small and micro brand owners are exempt from the provisions of PWM 2022. Please note, small and micro brand owners, not small and micro producers, not small and micro importers. Only brand owners, small and micro, have been given a relief that they will not be covered under PWM 2022 rules. Okay, this is a lot of information in one slide. I hope I was clear and simple in terms of explaining it. But if there are questions, I'll be happy to take them at the end of the presentation. But moving on to the next slide, there is one more category called reuse, but that does not apply so much, to the brand. That does not apply so much to the producers. It is largely for brand owners. So I'm not going to spend time on that too much. What you can see on the right-hand side is a column where brand owners have been told that certain amount of your packaging product, you have to also promote the concept of reuse. In India, for example, we will buy a plastic bottle of water, and then once the water is consumed, we will refill it. That's one example of a reuse. Many times the bottle is used for storing oil, and things like that. So that's another side event, not so much of a concern for most of you on the call today. The other one, of course, is the banning of single-use plastics that became effective 1st July, that just 5-6 days ago, where several categories that have been identified as single-use plastics have been banned. Now, I must say that there is a lot of confusion still amongst the plastic producers, processors and producers, but hopefully with the, like it is with any rule which is new, there's always a period of confusion that eventually gets clarified. So with the last 3-4 slides, the key concepts of EPR have been covered. So categories of packaging, definition of importer, producer, brand owner, EPR target, how to arrive at the EPR target, mechanical recycling targets, and recycled content targets. These are really the highlights of the PWM 2022 rules. Moving on to the next slide. Now, many of you in the form that was sent out said that we are planning to register for EPR and things. So on this slide, you will find details and connects. So the Central Pollution Control Board has set up a portal, which you can see on the first point, cpcbeprplastics.in, in which every producer, importer, and brand owner is supposed to log in and upload details of their production process. In the portal, there is an instruction sheet that is easily downloadable. There is also a SOP for filling up the forms or the data that is required for registration. Now, let me tell you what the government is trying to do here. They, on this portal, as more brand owners, importers, and producers start registering, what they are essentially doing is creating a map of the plastic packaging value chain in India. You know, who are the producers, who are they supplying to, where are they buying from, etc. Second point that I would also like to highlight here is that this website actually went live from, I think it was late April, early May. So it's been a couple of months since this website is live. And having assisted several organizations, I can tell you that preparation for registration, meaning ensuring that all your documents are in place, you have carefully studied the documents, does take up a lot of time. In my discussions with CPCB and the ministry, what they have told us is that right now they are only focusing on and advising every producer, importer, brand owner to register their details on the portal. For apparently they will, they are inviting, they are also conducting several awareness sessions. They are reaching out to several people and encouraging people to come and register. So one of the key things that all of you should consider is whether you are liable under the EPR PWM rules and should start preparing for registration on the portal. I say this from 2 points. One is obviously from a compliance side, that if there's a rule, you make sure that you are compliant. The second is from a business side. So what will happen is, as let's say one of your customer registers and they put your name as a supplier and you are not registered, then there's a likelihood that CPCB might send you a notice asking you to register on the portal. Secondly, CPCB is also advising companies like Reliance, Indian Oil, HP, GAIL and others, and large producers like Avery Dennison, Uttamaki, others, that please do not sell material to anyone who is not registered. So this could have some business implications for you. And therefore, apart from compliance, even from a business perspective, this would be important. The last thing that you mentioned here, that we have mentioned on the slide, is that if your factory is coming up for renewal of your consent to operate, now compliance with plastic waste management rules, along with the air and water consent, etc., will become a compulsion. So there's a likelihood that your CTO may not be approved or may not be renewed if you're not compliant with PWM 2022. So from these variety of angles, it would be prudent for every one of you to look at where you stand, where the operations are, and to start working on the registration process. Next slide. So very quickly, the key takeaways are, please register as soon as you can on the CPCB EPR portal. Make sure that your plastic waste, even your factory waste, earlier many companies, we sell it off to a scrap trader, scrap dealer, but now that's not enough. You have to make sure that that vendor is a registered vendor with the Pollution Control Board, and that he gives you a certificate that the waste has been soundly disposed, environmentally soundly disposed. Please maintain any certificates that you may have of plastic waste disposal. So supposing you have given scrap to a recycler, take a certificate from him that you have given him so much quantity of waste and that he has appropriately recycled it. Make sure, obviously, you're not using any of the banned SUP. The government is really seemingly now very hot on single-use plastics. They are asking individuals to report on establishments that are using single-use, etc. And then, of course, one must always take steps to reduce plastic waste or plastic usage, maybe, as just being a commercially nice thing to do. Why waste a precious resource like plastics? So the rules are there. They are much clearer now than they were in 2016. I do believe that some more amendments will come, but it is better to start working on the registration for plastic waste management earlier than later. So that's my last slide, actually. Thank you so much for your attention. I know it's a big subject and it's very difficult to cover in 25 minutes, but I'd be very happy to take any questions, any clarifications that you may have. Over to you, Manoj.
No, I think thank you, Shalinder ji, for a comprehensive understanding of what EPR is and what we should all be doing as producers. Jaideep ji, we can open the forum for any questions or clarifications.
Yes, the forum is open for questions. So if somebody raises their hand, I can unmute them and, we can. There's a question in the QA. Can we get the presentation from Kalpesh Patel? Shalinder ji.
Yeah, Manoj ji, you want to answer that? Or yeah.
Yeah, this is all public information. So there is, we will be able to share a copy of the presentation.
I think at the time of the registration, your email IDs may have been given. So some of these can be emailed.
Yeah, I think if we get a copy of the presentation, we can mail it to all the participants who have joined for the program.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Any other next question, please? You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, this is Mukesh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you, Mukesh ji.
Okay. So I have a question. I think probably you and Avery can answer this both together. Now, as per the label converters, now we fall in the category 3 where one layer is plastic.
Yeah.
Now, how? I mean, in terms of record keeping, how can we do that? I mean, because we are using a lot of mix of paper and plastic. Let's put it this way: apart from different types of plastics, and then there's a release also is of plastic sometimes. So how do you? Because I think in your percentage you said by kg, while the entire material is being sold by Avery Dennison is in terms of square meters. Or for that matter, any other supplier is also selling by square meters. Now, as you said, that CB website is going to track the sales and from the manufacturer to the converters and to the further brand owners. So the question is, let's say, how do we put that record from square meters to kgs?
Yeah. So.
Go ahead, Shalinder.
No. So, Manoj, obviously the conversion factor you can take, but let me clarify a couple of things. Somebody also asked in the chat box. The pressure sensitive labels are largely multi-layer packaging because they have one layer of plastic and one layer of paper or some other material. So they are MLP. That's MLP meaning multi-layer packaging under PWM category 3. Second point I wanted to make is that PWM, plastic waste management, deals with only plastic waste. So on the portal, they are not looking for how much paper you're consuming and things like that. The questions are asked around type of plastic. So whether it's polyethylene, HDP, polystyrene, PET, so on and so forth, but it only deals with plastic. And
No,
the conversion.
Sorry. Sorry, can I stop you for a second? My
Yeah,
question
please.
is, no, I think I'm clear on that, but the question is, let's say when we buy a label stock from Avery, which is, let's say, clear on clear.
The square meter to kilogram conversion, right?
No.
Yeah,
Let
so
me
now,
let me answer that. Let me answer that. Mukesh ji.
Yeah, please,
Manoj, can I complete the question again? Just
please, yeah, go ahead, Mukesh.
So now let's say if we do a square meter, let's say hypothetically 1 square meter is 100 grams. So, and since the EPR responsibility is in kgs and not square meters for us.
Yeah.
Do we have to change the entire system? So Avery is going to say, let's say if they're selling 2000 square meters of clear on clear, that on the invoice, the kg component of plastic is this. Because I think that is the best way to control, because nobody would be able to keep track and record of that.
Yeah. Good suggestion. Good suggestion. We haven't thought in that direction, Mukesh ji, but I think the idea is good. We will see if it's practical and workable. But just for the benefit of everyone, let me explain to you how we have calculated our facility as Avery Dennison, right? So let me take 2 or 3 different examples. Let's say there is a product which is a PP hot melt product, which is predominantly used by most people. Now this laminate has the face as polypropylene, the liner is glassine, and there is an adhesive. So the amount of plastic for every square meter of PP white that I use will be limited to the quantum of the face that is there in the laminate. The glassine is not accounted for, adhesive is not accounted for. If I have another label stock material like a COC, like Mukesh you mentioned, there is this weight of the face and the weight of the liner that will be calculated for the overall plastic consumption that you are doing as a producer. The adhesive is not included in that calculation. Similarly, if I have another label stock material which has a PET liner and a paper face stock, the amount of PET in the consumption is only calculated as the plastic that you are responsible to comply under the EPR. So it's a little bit complex, and we will try and see how we can simplify this calculation for everybody, so that you know if you're buying a particular grade of material from Avery Dennison, how much of that grade has plastic, which has to be compliant by this EPR regulation. If there's a way for us to do it on the invoice, I don't know. Let me check on that and come back to you. But otherwise, also we can build a simple calculator which can help you calculate your usage of plastic in your transaction, and that is your starting point to determine your liability under the EPR policy.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's just to add on to what Manoj said. I think that ultimately whether you want to include it in the invoice or not is a decision you've got to take. But in the interim, what may help is a letter that kind of talks about the density of the material and therefore the mass of or kilograms or metric tons as a factor that can be used for uploading any documents that you need onto the EPR portal for the purposes of CPCB calculations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, please?
Yeah, please, do not hesitate to ask a question. There is no, let me tell you that there is no correct question or stupid question. Let me first say that. And I can also tell you that as I deal with several processors across India, there are still some confusion. So if you have any questions, do not hold back. It's important to get it clarified.
There is one question in the chat box which says pressure sensitive labels fall under which category of plastic?
I did address that earlier, but let me repeat again. A pressure sensitive label, as far as I understand it, is a combination of, plastic and paper. So in that sense, it has one layer of plastics and another layer of another material. So by the definition, it is a multi-layer packaging, a multi-layer packaging material. So it falls under category 3 as per the definition of PWM 2022. There's another question that talks about, is there any limitation on thickness of film, like it should be above 50 microns or something? This is a great question, Anmolji. And there is the PWM rules talk about plastic film not being less than 50 microns. So that's mentioned. However, 2-3 conditions are given. The first one is that if the material is an integral part of the packaging. So let me give you an example of what is an integral part. So imagine a chips packet. That chips packet plastic packaging is integral to the product. If your packaging is integral, then the 50 micron thickness does not apply. Second place where it does not apply is if increasing your thickness of the film somehow impairs the functionality of the film. Meaning, let me give you another example. Let's say shrink films. If they go above certain microns, they don't shrink properly. So if there is a technical difficulty of not being able to increase to 50 microns, then CPCB has given a provision that a letter be written to them explaining what the technical difficulty is, how increasing the thickness impacts the performance of the film, and then on that special case basis, an exemption will be granted. Hope to be granted. Now, for all others, it is required to be a minimum of 50 microns.
Do we
I
have
hope
any
that
other,
clarifies.
do we have any other questions for Shalinder ji? Well, I think people are still needing to absorb the information. There seems to be quite a bit of heavy information which has been given. So there's still, okay, is label considered an integral part of the packaging?
Great question. So it depends, how it is applied. In most cases, and Manoj, you are probably a better person to answer this, but from the chips packet part of it, where every information about the packaging is on the packaging. I don't know typically in the industry how labels are applied and what they are seen as. But first let Manoj answer, then I can give you the regulation side of it.
Yeah. Nimaji, yes, it is an integral part of the packaging. So all labels will be exempt from that 50 micron limitation that Shalinder ji just explained. Just to be a little clearer, where does this 50 micron apply in our case, in our situations, is on secondary packaging materials. When I ship out the material to you, there is a PE wrap that I use, a bubble wrap that I use. Those are not integral parts of the packaging, and therefore this 50 micron rule applies for those kind of materials. But for all product labels and other situations where we supply to brand owners, it is considered to be an integral part of the packaging.
There's a question from Hemnath ji. Do we have to ensure that our customers and vendors are registered as well? Yes, it would be good idea to make sure that they are registered, because what I think, and in some cases it has already started happening, where the customer or the brand owner has started asking their vendors, are you registered with EPR or not? And when you go to upload your documents on the portal, they also ask are you buying from registered EPR, registered vendors? And they have a drop box which throws the names of all the registered vendors on the portal. And then they have a column saying, do you buy from unregistered vendors? In that question, you have to give the name of the company, the address of the company, the name of the person, and the mobile number. So you know why this data is being asked for. So if either your vendor or your customer puts it up as you're unregistered, then you please anticipate a letter from CPCB asking you why you have not registered. So one of the intentions of mapping this value chain is to understand who are the vendors, who are the customers, who are they buying from. So similarly, it would be advisable for you to make sure that your vendors and customers are registered. Only one exemption, if your customer is a brand owner and he is a small or a micro enterprise, as per the definition of MSME, Ministry of MSME, then they are exempt from PW.
Yeah, I had some question. I skipped it. Sorry, missed my mind. So, Hemant, the answer to your question is yes. You need to be, all the vendors that you are buying plastic materials from need to be registered for EPR. We have received several inquiries from let's say large converters who are asking us this question: is Avery Dennison registered for EPR? There is also a business implication of not registering for EPR, which was explained by Shalinder ji in his commentary, and which means the brand owner has this right not to buy material from people who are not registered with the EPR. They will be in a position to take that decision at some point in time. So the request is in the business interest of everyone, let's treat this regulation as something that all of us need to comply, and we will need to register ourselves in the CPCB portal as a producer. That was another question on the chat I asked. What do PS label converters, what are PS label converters being called? We are being referred to as producers. The definition is very clear. When the presentation is shared with you, you can read the definition of the producer, and you will realize that all of us in this industry are classified as producers.
Right. There are two more questions on the chat box. One is about, the government by Rajesh Nemaji, saying the government clarified that only films wrapping sweets, boxes and cigarette boxes are banned. Yeah, those are banned under single-use plastic. So amongst the 16 items that were identified as single-use plastics, 2 of those items were wrappings used for sweet boxes and the wrapping on cigarette boxes. They are banned. Everything else is subject to EPR. Every other packaging material is subject to EPR provisions. There's also a question asking by Anjali ji, do the converters of PS label fall under importer category? You will fall under importer category if you are importing any packaging. If you are buying everything locally, then you are not an importer. The other one, of course, is if you are an importer, you need to have an import-export certificate. I hope that clarifies.
Shalinder ji, a question
Yes,
from my side. When
Yes,
we
sir.
have to go for the registration for EPR, there would be a set of documentation which we need to prepare. So
Yes.
what is it feasible to give out the list of documentation what we need to prepare, or it is given on the website and we have to go through the details available on the website and then prepare for that?
Yeah. So a great question. So there is an instruction sheet available on the website. There is also what is known as an SOP or a standard operating process document, which lists If you are a producer, what is the document? Importer, what document? Brand owner, what document? So those are listed. But for your benefit, very quickly, I will give you, there'll be, of course, company details like GST, PAN number, number like that. If there's someone from your company who's registering your company on the portal, then that person's PAN card, Aadhaar card, all the identification documents, your where you're buying your products from, where are you operating, where are your plants, in which states are you selling your materials, like that. So a document supporting your calculation of A, B, and C. In the case of an importer, you would need the import-export certificate, but all of these document requirements are mentioned on that SOP, which is available on that CPCB website. Feel free to download it and you can read all the requirements there.
Okay. Is there any more questions from any of the participants? Otherwise we can wind up the session.
Yeah, I don't see any new questions.
Neither do I see any questions coming up from anyone.
Yeah.
So I think I'll wind up the session as there seems to be no questions from anybody. But let me wind up with one note that if you still feel you have questions later on, please feel free to write to us at LMAI. We will get in touch with Shailendraji and try and get them answered for you as far as possible. If you need registration, at the moment we do not have a process in place, but shortly we should put up a panel and help you all register, help you all to get registered for this EPR program by the government. We are working on that closely with Avery Dennison and Shailendraji and see how we can help all of you to register for the program. In the meantime, let me thank Shailendraji, Manoj ji, and all of you for taking out your valuable time and being with us on this session for EPR, which is a great informative session. Thank you, Shailendraji. You did a brilliant job of educating us on the importance of EPR. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.